Russian President Vladimir Putin shutting down all high-level communications between the Kremlin and the White House as the U.S. and its allies agree to impose additional economic sanctions against Russia. Stephen Yates, the former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Cheney for National Security Affairs and a distinguished fellow at Hamilton Foundation. Distinguished in general. Stephen, great to have you here.
Thank you, Jamie. Great to be with you.
How key is communication?
Well, communication is very important, but it often comes in many forms. These phone calls cutting off is interesting, but Putin has been communicating with his actions rather than words over the phone in recent days, playing a little bit of cat and mouse with our president, it would seem, sending diplomats out to reach agreements that they don't really implement or enforce. Meanwhile, the encroachment in Ukraine continues and no real responsibility taken by Russia.
Ukraine today, what tomorrow? How concerned should we be?
Well, I think we have to be very concerned because Russia clearly has a revisionist notion of where its boundaries are, the boundaries of its influence, but maybe even its territorial boundaries. And we in the United States and with our allies in Europe haven't been terribly clear about what objective or endpoint we seek in this. Are we looking to put the boundaries back and take Crimea back under Ukraine's control? Are we looking to insulate Europe against coercion from Russia? We need to be a little bit more clear about what we aim to do.
Are actions in Poland proper?
I think they are. I think the people in Poland and a lot of our Eastern European allies wondered about our resolve and wondered whether we would abide by our commitments under our alliance agreements. So I think the military exercises involving Poland and the Baltic states, important signal, a little bit late in this process, but important. It doesn't directly say what we aim to do in Ukraine and how, but it maybe sends a signal of we're not going to allow the line move too far beyond Ukraine.
Do you think Putin is moved at all by the threat of additional economic sanctions? He seems like Teflon Don at the moment.
Very much so. I definitely think there's diminishing utility about talking about sanctions. The president in Asia was talking about these sanctions being teed up. I think it's past time to talk about these things and just do them, but we should be under no illusion that sanctions alone will change his calculus. To date, they haven't influenced him at all.
So what's next? What else do we have that we can put on the table?
Well, I think that we need to be working more clearly and closely with Europe to say basically what our objectives are. Are we looking to address the coercion by Russia? If so, we need to have a comprehensive strategy with Europe, with them in the lead on energy, economic assistance, and improving basically the governing competence of the Ukraine's government in transition. If it's restoring the boundaries of Europe and taking the Crimea back, that's a very difficult task, one that needs a lot of resources but a lot of thought. But at this point, we haven't even made clear what we aim to do with what resources and what we expect of the parties involved.
How big a mistake is that? Because if you're watching right now at home, you know, I often want to explain to people why this matters, why they should pay attention to it.
Well, I think it's very important. We have to take very seriously when we have a major military and economic power seeking to revise territorial boundaries. Sovereignty is one of the principles that allows states to engage in relations with one another somewhat predictably and responsibly. And Russia, as a revisionist power, getting away with it has consequences for its near abroad, but also elsewhere, say with China and its claims in East Asia and whatever Iran's influence may be growing in the Middle East. This is a critical issue that we have to be clear about.
Before we go, when you put Russia and Iran together, that's a pretty frightening prospect.
That certainly is. But, I mean, really, one of the great problems we've had is that we have not been able to make clear what our objectives are, where these alleged red lines may be, and what we're prepared to do about them in all of these challenges. And I think that signal of weakness and uncertainty is destabilizing.
Less weakness and more outspokenness from the White House. Stephen Yates, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie.
Kelly?